Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, nice to be back on the Investigative Journal on this Tuesday. It's December 12th, 2017, and I'm going to call it Political Tuesday. And the reason, this is Greg Anthony, by the way, on the Investigative Journal, and I'm going to call it Political Tuesday because I want to talk politics today, but from a different angle. I'm sure that many people in this country, I'd say a majority, 99%, maybe a little less, either believe in three things when you talk politics. They're either a Democrat, a Republican, oh, you can throw independents in there, let's mix those in, or people are apathetic and they just turn off the political system. All three are wrong. And the reason I say that it is you're not going to get anywhere by pushing an agenda that the Vatican-led New World Order puts out there for you. And the reason is there's a lot more to the political system behind the scenes than there is in front on the stage. And when I say on the stage, that's exactly what this is. When you look at politics in America, you have to think about Hollywood. You might as well just say you're watching a reality show. And the participants or the actors play a specific role. You have, let's look at your government. You have a two-party system, the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans. And then, of course, you have a huge executive branch that's grown into a monster, controlling most of what you do in America. All of it, think of it as a political stage. Something that you can take a front row seat and enjoy yourself if you understand what's really going on behind the scenes. The directors, the producers, all of the people that make this stage play, this reality show called the American governmental system, basically an illusion, but a reality for most people. Now, the reason I say that is, if you prescribe to the left, all you're going to be doing right now is pushing an agenda to get Trump out of office, right? And the media, which is controlled by the Vatican-led New World Order, is obsessed with this. And that's all you hear. And so people are getting a dose of what I call third world media here. This is not freedom of the press. These people, if you watch what's going on, and I pay close attention to it because I came from the mainstream media, and if I would have not found out the truth behind the directors and the producers and all of this stage play going on when I lived in Rome for 7 years, I would have been probably one of them. Because that's all I really can do. Oh, of course, I went and got a law degree. But when you look at the tainting and the tainting of the justice system, when you look at the folly that goes on there, I picked two professions that are probably the most deceptive and degenerate professions that exist today in America. There is no justice. And the higher you go up, you can expect less and less and less and less and less. A controlled justice system, a controlled media, a controlled left-wing party, a controlled right-wing party, a controlled executive branch. For example, when you look at what's going on in the justice system today, when you see the double standard that's being used, being played upon the American people right now, with this investigation into Trump's collusion with the Russians, you see that it's whipping up anger amongst all of the liberals who are basically looking at a system that they think will dethrone who they call the selected president, or the one who assumed the office of presidency because he had help from the Russians. Well, let's look at this. They have a special counsel now looking into this story, right? Now, when you take a special counsel and put him into place in Washington, which means he's not connected to the Attorney General, takes no orders from them, there usually is a crime that's alleged. There usually is a crime that he's investigating that basically you can find probable cause for a crime. And then he investigates it, it's taken to a grand jury, and you either have the thumbs up or thumbs down. But here there's no crime. There's never been anything shown that the Trump administration colluded with the Russians. In fact, it's just the opposite. There's mountains of evidence that Hillary Clinton and her campaign colluded with the Russians. And you can get into that if you follow the politics in Washington. Now, the Attorney General allowed this to go on. The Justice Department is filled with Clintonites. And Trump does nothing but just fight back with the Twitter account. This is orchestrated, because in a real system, this would have never happened. And they'd be working on the issues that would help the American people, but basically, it's just delay, fight. Now we have every woman in America coming forward saying that, you walk on. I was joking the other day. I said, I don't want to take the New York subway with any women on it. If I accidentally brush against them, they might say political, might be, abuse, or I'm harassing a woman. I mean, you can't, it's going to backfire on women. Nobody's going to want to associate with them for fear you're going to get called for sexual harassment. I mean, would you imagine? I lived in Italy, and when you meet somebody, sometimes you hug. I mean, that would be uncalled for here, right? What are you supposed to do? I'm not shaking any woman's hand anymore. Forget about it. I'll say hello. But anyway, that's the climate I'm talking about that they're creating. And it is an orchestrated creation. We have now, senators being, resigning. For example, if you were a senator like Al Franken, a Democrat, and follow me on this because I'm rambling a bit, but you're going to understand where I'm going on this show. Where I'm going is that all of this is a stage play. And if you fall into one of the categories, for example, sometimes I play a game with myself. And I say, okay, I'm going to forget about everything I know about what goes on behind the scenes. The Vatican-led New World Order, how they use the Hegelian dialectic, how the left and the right are basically actors working together for the New World Order agenda. For example, about 2 weeks ago, they started pushing this idea of chain migration must end in America. Now, chain migration means that, and they have a lottery system. We don't have a merit-based system of immigration in this country like Australia. What we have is basically if you're a family member, you can, there's people that bring 20 family members in on their one visa. So all of a sudden you hear chain migration, which you haven't heard of, in the public view, in the public media. It started a few weeks ago. Then all of a sudden in New York, you get a guy who supposedly screwed up a bombing, which is I believe it's a false flag event. And guess what? Chain migration. He wouldn't have been here if it wasn't for chain migration. So, they're pushing an agenda. And then the left will come back and say, we have to allow everyone comes into America. Hillary Clinton, I remember, gave a speech one time that said that there should be open borders in all of North America, from Canada and America to Mexico. Literally meaning there would be no America anymore. So this is the game that you're listening to every day. This is the play that you listen to every day. And unless you have an idea of why they do this, who they are, how they orchestrate this, then you're going to be lost in either a Republican cloud of deception or a Democratic cloud of deception. Or if you're apathetic and don't want to get involved, you'll just turn it all off and allow them to walk right over you. So let me give you a couple examples of how they do this. Now, one, it's constant in the media today. You're having this America First agenda on the Trump side. This is the right wing saying we need to build up America, tax cuts, we need the health reform. None of it's been done yet, by the way. Jobs are starting to flow into America. The stock market's at an all-time high. And then you have the other side fighting back by creating this agenda that right-wing America is destroying this country. It's Nazism. Trump is being, called a Nazi by many people in the media, mainstream media, and Hollywood, etc. And people are listening to stories that come out of CNN and and ABC and the Washington Post and the New York Times that many times are false, but yet they allow the narrative to get out there, and then they correct it maybe 7 hours later, a day later, and millions of people have heard a false story. So what is it creating? Chaos. It's creating a situation where you have the left wing fighting the right wing, nothing gets done, and in the middle we have all these issues that really play into the hand of what's going on behind the scenes, what the directors and the producers are really doing in the world of destroying this country and creating a new world order. And I even gotten into the orchestration of the terrorism that we've talked about, the orchestration of wars going on with North Korea, ISIS, a creation of the Vatican-led New World Order. And we seem to 90% of the people, like I said, seem to just fall prey to it and believe one side or the other. They cannot believe that something else would exist. Something else would exist. And what is that something else? It's what we talk about on this show for years and years and years. It is the orchestration of the American government, who is controlled behind the scenes by a number of, we could call them elites, call them the Vatican, Jesuits behind the scene. There's a whole secret society of people that have put together a system that on the surface seems, wow, the American government, look at it. It's the pinnacle of freedom in the world. But in a sense, when the freedom is just an illusion, when these parties are just an illusion, when they're there, I mean, for example, Trump puts into the Attorney General's office Jeff Sessions. Now, Jeff Sessions is a puppet. He's perceived as a very righteous, truthful lawyer who's been a senator from a Republican state of Alabama for 20 years. And when he gets into the Attorney General's office, he doesn't do anything to clean it out. He's got people in there that are loyal to Hillary Clinton. He allows Mueller to take over a special investigation against Trump on no charges whatsoever, when in fact he should be prosecuting all of the crimes of the Clinton administration that have colluded with Russia, but nothing happens. And what does that do? It whips up anger amongst the right wing, while the left wing plays this game that Trump is the one colluding. And it's a great way to basically present a great show for the American people, right? Now, do you remember the Simpsons show that's been aired on the internet? God, you can get it. In 2000 or whatever, they had an episode where Trump was a man looking like Trump coming down the escalator running for president. It was the exact same hand movement that Trump did. Everything was similar to what the Simpsons already showed you. Now, when people try to say, look, they've selected Trump, people in the mainstream, both left and right, by the way, gang up together to prevent this story that we present on this show from ever getting out. We have such a small listenership here. Sometimes I wonder why I even do this. Because the fact is, like the other day, I did a show on Tony Alamo. All right. I brought on Bert Krantz, and I've trumpeted the story of how the Alamo ministry was targeted for years because of their Christian views as the views that the Protestant reformers had, i.e. one, you don't need the Vatican to go to heaven, grace of God, that's the key through the Bible, and two, in the book of Revelations, the Vatican is the Antichrist institution, which those are the two major tenets of the Protestant Reformation, which this ministry preached, and what happened to it. Tony Alamo was falsely accused and put in prison and died there 7 months ago before he served a 175-year sentence. And they also used Child Protective Services to kidnap their children when no child abuse charges were ever found. And that was the children of the ministry, many of them, at least 35 to 40 that I counted when this thing first broke in 2008. So what they do is anyone who breaches the Hegelian, who gets into the truth behind the story. Now, you're going to find on the internet many people who say, look at the 9/11 truth movement. You're going to find people there, oh, look at the government has done this, but they never break the seal of who is behind the government. They don't get into the Vatican. And so you have in these truth organizations many COINTEL people who are controlling the movement to keep this story away from you. Because once you get a grasp of it, all I ever said was, let's put this story, let's put the reason that they present this, what's basically a folly between the left and the right, and gathering those who believe in the right-wing cause, those who believe in the left-wing cause, to rub against each other and fight. Both of them come together to prevent this story, to prevent the truth coming about everything from this country, from the formation of it, through the assassination of Lincoln by the Vatican-led New World Order, through the creation of the Federal Reserve, through the creation of our phony tax system. I always laugh when they're working on tax reform and tax cuts. First of all, the income tax is illegal. It's unconstitutional. If you want to reform it, get rid of it the way it should be. There was no income tax for majority of the time America's been a country until they figured out a phony little lawyer trick to even bypass the Supreme Court, who's also ruled, never come out and said that income tax is constitutional, because they can't. So what they did is they made it voluntary, and when you tell somebody like that, they look at you like you're crazy. The propaganda works. And anytime anyone talks about this story, the left and the right wing main journalists, let's use two of them on the left, two on the right. We got Anderson Cooper or Don Lemon on the left from CNN, and you can think of others from the Post, Woodward, Bernstein, the rest of these guys. And then take Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity on the left. I'd put Bill O'Reilly in there, but he's gone because of, sexual allegations that he was harassing women in the workplace. And all of these, when you start talking the way I do, will come together to say, oh, these people are conspiracy nuts, theory, look at this. But what we're saying here is the most patriotic, the most American that ever existed. Because somebody asked me the other day, why can you base this stuff on fact? And I said, yeah, there's a lot of facts. And you can't get them all. You got to use some circumstantial evidence when you deal with a secret society. But I thought about it and I said, when I go back into history, I find more people aware of what we talk about here today, and more books being written, more newspapers even coming out talking in these terms. Years ago, during the 1800s, 1700s, even during, you can look into Europe back during the times of the French Revolution and everything. They were very well aware of the Vatican's role in just trying to destroy sovereign nations and bringing them under papal authority. And as we move farther and farther, as technology grows and makes it so easy to communicate, we get less and less of it because the communication is all tainted. It's most of it controlled by the very organizations we talk about. so that you don't get this story out. You don't get the true political climate that's existing. What you're getting, I can turn on the TV right now, and whether I go to Fox on the right or CNN on the left and the rest of the publications, a majority are all left-wing anyway, you're going to see that it's a game. It's a play that they're putting on. Because I understand the Hegelian dialectic. And because I put this story side by side to what they say on those channels. And I say, if the American people were presented truthfully with history, truthfully with what happened, and you put the right-wing agenda there, the left-wing agenda there, and then you put the real agenda that we talk about here, piercing the veil of these parties and entering into what we call the Hegelian dialectic, how they use this left and right scenario in politics to basically move the third part, their real agenda behind the scenes. I believe that most Americans would basically believe what we say here, or at least say, listen, he's right. Your vote doesn't count. I've said many times, going to these polls, what good is it? No matter if the left or the right win, nothing gets done. Look at Trump now. The right has what? The White House, the Senate, and the Congress. And it won't be for long. And nothing's gotten done. They haven't got anything done. And basically everything they will get done will benefit what the real agenda is. And all of this idea that we're hearing nothing but from the right wing, this is a double standard. We see only the Republicans getting prosecuted and the Democrats scot-free, always walk, always do this. Well, this is geared towards getting rid of the last vestige of justice in this country, bringing in a totalitarian system that's veiled in freedom and truth. And the more control they get, the more that they can feed the idea that the American system is now going to rise, the more chances they have of bringing in something new when this little, play changes again. You see, what they'll do is they'll have the right wing in power for a while now. And then everything the right wing does will get changed when the left wing comes in, and maybe there'll be some big event where nobody can come in anymore, and that's on the front, and that's on our foreign front. Our domestic policy is one thing, our foreign policy is another, and they play the game of war like they play the game of politics. So anything can happen there. When they want to ignite a World War III, they can do it. And all the pieces are in place now. For example, look at what Trump just did. Now, every president, I've seen, Bush and Obama both say they're going to put our embassy in the capital and recognize, finally, officially, Jerusalem as the capital. But they never did it. Now, Trump did it. And what's so unusual about it? Every country has a right to choose its capital. But that created strife overseas. Just because he followed policy. And that is an orchestrated effort to now create more tension in the Middle East. And also then ignite more fuel to the fire of ISIS, while North Korea and all of the money is going in, the West money going into creating this nuclear problem that we have, not to mention the natural disasters that are going on through weather manipulation, and I'll get into that a little bit in the second half hour. But, what I'm trying to get at is that we'll talk about that in the second half hour on the Investigative Journal, all out of time.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This ain't happening.
Okay, we're back for the Investigative Journal, and we're exploring what lies behind the political system of America, the political systems of the world. And we're finding that it's a difficult chore to get this message out, isn't it? How do you do it when you have billions and billions of dollars going into the stage play we call the American political process, which really is the military arm of the Vatican and the Roman Empire, still in existence today? So you have to go way, way back to start understanding this. And people, frankly, don't have the patience anymore to read history. And frankly, it's difficult to find information that lays a foundation of truth for this story. That one, and we're going to make it very simple. The left wing in America and the right wing in America are an orchestrated system to bring about a one world order. And both of them work together, seemingly fighting on the surface constant, seemingly in the public always fighting. Let me give you an example. in the alternative media, I learned that it was tainted and learned that it was controlled just like the mainstream media when I worked years ago, when I got involved in it, because no one would want the story in the mainstream. So I figured that the alternative media was truthful. And I got involved and did my radio show on two of the biggest alternative stations. My show was right after or before Alex Jones's show, who's probably one of the biggest co-intel people. And I always say, AKA Bill Hicks. And that's how I learned that they are constantly fighting together, because I worked on a station called Republic Broadcasting Network and Genesis, Alex Jones being on the Genesis network, John Stadmiller being the head of Republic, and I think he still is. And they used to fight back and forth. But in the end, behind the scenes, they were buddies. And that's how it works. And in the alternative, basically, they fight against the government. They give you this story that, we've got to change the American government, but they never want to go behind the scenes and talk about the real controllers and how it really operates. And I know that well because they wouldn't let me talk about it anymore on those stations. I remember Ron Paul used to go on these alternative stations back then and talk about, the movement he had. And I said, Ron, I called his aides, why don't you come on my show? He wouldn't. Because he didn't want to deal, they briefed him and said, no, you don't go on Greg's show because you're going to have to deal with the Vatican, and they do not want to talk about that. Now you say, well, I go to Alex Jones now and he mentions the Pope is satanic and all, and he's trying to bring the Catholic Church down. I said, yeah. They're playing the game that they played in the movie Angels and Demons with Ron Howard and Tom Hanks. That there's a good side and the bad side of the Vatican, and now the evil side is in, and they're fighting the Hegelian dialectic all over again. There is no good side of the Vatican at the hierarchy. It is a satanic, Luciferian organization, the Antichrist from the system, going way back. So how far do you have to go back? We're talking about you want to get away from the Hegelian dialectic in the left-right wing politics of America. How far do you have to go back? Well, I recommend you go back to the formation of this country, and maybe even farther back. I'm not saying go back to the beginning of time. I'm saying go back to the 1600s and really pursue an avenue of, look, I want to know why this country was formed, who formed it. It isn't what they tell you in the college history books. And I always said, I want my money back that I've spent in all these universities and even in law school for all of the BS they taught me. So that's what you have to do. Now, the question then becomes, okay, we're talking just about the political system. But what about the spiritual realm? What about this meshing together of the Vatican now seemingly in control of the American politics? The Pope came here and spoke to Congress. That's an unprecedented move that gets people now don't even think about it. But the point is, how far do you have to go back to figure out the evil? Where does this evil come from? Because let's play the game the way the left and the right wing play it in the mainstream. Okay? They say that the left wing says the right wing are the evildoers. The left wing says, the left wing says the right wing says the left wing is the evildoers. Well, where do these people come from? Are they just duly elected by the American people and then they turn evil? Or is the whole system an evil system? And it doesn't matter where they come from. And the higher up they go, if they don't pledge their allegiance to this system, they will either be killed like Paul Wellstone, remember the senator from Minnesota? There's always going to be a few outcasts that see the folly, see what's going on, and they have to be marginalized or killed. Now, let's look at it from the alternative media. They say the entire American system is evil, but they never get down to where it comes from. Oh, it comes from the Bush administration. It comes from the Obama administration. It comes from basically all of these people infiltrating America to destroy it. But they never really get to the bottom of where this evil comes from. How far do you have to go back to figure it out? Well, I recommend that you go all the way back to the beginning. Now, people are going to say, what is the beginning? And you're going to get a majority of I'm just using America, okay, because that's where I live, or where I was born. A majority of people say, well, I can't go back hundreds of thousands of years to talk about the, where the evil came from when we evolved from apes, because they believe in the evolutionary system. So they're saying the world is millions of years old. And so they, if I say go back to the beginning, they'll say, well, I can't do that. It's impossible. So where do you go? I say, well, listen, why don't we make it easy? And just bear with me, you people that believe in the evolutionary system. And bear with me, all you people say it's impossible to trace evil back to the beginning. And I said, well, bear with me here. We're a Judeo-Christian society, right? Why don't we go back to the beginning of the Bible? Just indulge me for a while. That means you only have to go, you want to go back 4,000, 5,000 years? Why don't we do that? Start there. To give us a basis of whether, what I'm going to tell you about evil, where it comes from, could be a possibility. A strong possibility, factual possibility, because it's not a bad way to look at it. Because everybody's always saying, we can't figure out where this evil comes from. And I'm saying, let's just start at the Bible. Okay, let's start in the beginning with Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel. Now we got people on, that do not believe in the Bible laughing at me right now going, come on, that's just a story. Well, in the Bible, there are many stories. Look, if you believe you're an atheist or a pagan, you've got stories out the yin-yang, myths that are out there that talk about all this stuff. So I'm going to even, make you happy and bring in a couple of those myths. But let me tell you how I figured this. Well, I didn't figure it out, but how I put this story on the table so that you might understand where evil comes from. Now, you may have your own theories. People can do that. You're free, in America, at least we have the idea to think freely, but most people don't. We're a free-thinking country, but most people don't think freely. Most people do not want to deal with any of these subjects. For example, if I say taxes are illegal, people aren't going to research it. They'll just say you're crazy and go on and pay them or try to sneak out of them. And then you're going to get in trouble because the government's really looking for people like that. And once you sign your name on the dotted line of those tax forms, they can cheat and lie and steal and put you in jail if they don't like you. Now, most people say that's not true. Well, it is. So what I'm getting at here is, why not use your free thinking ability? Now, the whole major concern here of the left and the right and the alternative media is to figure out where this evil came from, but they can never really put this idea on the table because it gets maybe too close to the truth, which is a no-no for all of them. They don't want you. The truth is veiled. The truth is something that they're creating in a stage play for you. It's like when you go to a theater group, a theater, and when you go to watch a play and they create this illusion and all of this story that, isn't true. You believe it to be true because you're there right there, involved in it right there as a third-party listener. And that's what you're doing in the American system. You're the extra on the stage, playing a part. That's what makes it better. You're not just sitting in the audience watching a theater play in Broadway. When you're involved in this play, you're actually an extra on the stage, being a part of it. So what I'm saying is, if you want to get away from being one of the extras in their movie, which you are expendable, just like any extra in Hollywood is, then you become a spectator like me. which is even more fun. I can understand and watch the owners and playing with you, using you, manipulating you. Come on, join me. Be just a spectator. It's the best position to be in. But most people will never do that. Never, never, never. So most people will never want to be a spectator. They want to be an extra in this play we call the American political system or the worldwide system, which will turn into a one world order, one world religion. And people will, unfortunately, accept it being deceived once more. And if you're an atheist right now, or if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Christian, whatever you are, I'm going to take you back to a story that's only 4,000, 5,000 years old that may shed some light on where this evil comes from. Now, how did I understand the story of Cain and Abel? Well, when I was trying to figure out the Vatican-led New World Order maybe 10 years ago, I happened to run across a guy by the name of Tupper Saucy, who'd been on, I had on my show several times before he died. Now, whether he was killed or not, I don't know, but boy, I'll tell you, for what he wrote, there was a good possibility that wasn't a natural death, although it's never been researched. No one's really talked about it. You can still go to his website, Tupper Saucy, TupperSaussy. You can still get the book Rulers of Evil. Miracles on Main Street is another book he wrote on the internet. And you can read it for yourself. But I got the chance to talk to him on the phone many times. Well, not many times, maybe 6 or 7 times. Sometimes an extended period of time. And I struggled with that question too. We got on the subject, where does this evil come from? And he said to me, have you ever read the story of Cain and Abel? And being a novice Bible believer, I said, well, sure. I remember, I know the story of Cain and Abel. He said, well, that's a clue. I said, well, he asked me, what do you think about it? And I said, well, Cain killed Abel, right? And God banished him. And I always said, well, maybe Cain is the evildoer. And he said, well, yeah, he was, but did you ever trace what the Bible says about that? And, I said, well, listen, I've talked to many people. I've been in Rome. I used to ask priests. I used to ask pastors, Protestant pastors. I've asked Buddhists. I've asked Hindu, where does evil come from? And they give me all these stories. But they never really pinpoint something that traces it right to the people today, because we got people running this world that are evil. And the more you look into it, the more you see they're evil. And not only their political intrigue and the assassinations and all the killings. Look at the Clinton administration. Look at Clinton's. I mean, look at the murders involved with the Clinton death toll and all of the crazy things they do. They're evil. But where does that come from? Are they just a rogue leader, or are they all, when they get to the top, being either turning into this system of evil, or they're assassinated? Is that why Lincoln was assassinated? Is that why several other presidents were assassinated? A number of presidents in our country, because they didn't follow the plan? Did they backstab? Is that why Pope John Paul, before John Paul II was killed after 33 days in office? Where does it come from? And Tupper Saucy told me, he said, have you read my book? I said, well, I just started talking to you, and I'm getting it. He sent me a copy, which I have right here in front of me right now. It's all marked up now. And it's really falling apart, to be honest with you, but I'm still holding on to it. It's going to be a relic, Pretty soon there will be no books. Everything's going to be online, and when they want to shut it off, we're going to be in the dark ages. But he said, did you ever read my chapter on the mark of Cain? I said, no, I didn't get there yet. I'm still going through what you're talking about the American Revolution, which opened my eyes. He said, oh, Greg, there's so much more to find out about what they did during the American Revolution. Please research that. That's only the tip of the iceberg of what I've presented. I said, I will. Don't worry, I will. And he said, why don't you read the Mark of Cain the way I interpret it and the way some other people that I've talked to interpret it? And I said, well, what did you find out? He said, well, I did some research on it, quite interesting. And I hope it enlightens people to look at that story. And you know what I did after I read it and I've talked about it a number of times on my show. I started to go around and ask pastors in the Protestant churches, which I knew were already taken over by the Jesuits, by the way. And I started to say, well, tell me, where does this evil come from in the government? Oh, they'd give me this story, blah, blah, blah. And then they'd read Romans or something and say, we must. What's that verse in Romans, we have to follow our leaders because they were anointed by God or something, where they always use that one verse to say, do not ever question, your leaders are doing good for you or something. You know what I'm talking about. And I said, well, what do you think about the Mark of Cain? The Cain and Abel story. Is that a clue? Oh, and they give me the traditional view, they talk about Cain not following the word of God. But they never really went in depth on it and never told me a real, never traced what Tupper Saucy said to me was the thesis that the evil, this is the beginning of it, and it's now being passed down, and it is strong, and it keeps growing and growing and growing, and the leaders of our world, and the Vatican being the Antichrist system, which of course he also prescribed to, have created this world of evil. And he laid out a plan, of how they did it in his book, in this chapter 24, The Mark of Cain. Now, I know others have, read this. People that listen to my show, get the book, Rulers of Evil. If you do anything in your life, maybe that somebody's got to pierce the veil on mainstream and talk about it, but all they'll do is marginalize you, so it's probably not even worth it. I tried many times back in the old days. One of the reasons I got to this point on my show was that I used myself as kind of a sacrificial lamb sometimes. I got myself involved. As a journalist, sometimes you do that. I was involved in the mainstream media. I was almost killed in a terrorist attack that I've talked about in Rome. I did put myself right out there to find out the truth. And then when I came back to America, I put myself right in the belly of the alternative beast, which I had no idea. I thought they were telling the truth. And so kind of as, someone that just comes into something without, like a child. You learn more because you're so darn dumb. You look back at your life and go, I wouldn't do that again, but you didn't know any better. And that's the way I was when I got involved in the alternative media. That's the way I was when I went to Rome. I knew nothing. And I learned it from the inside out, kind of almost as a guinea pig, Okay, Greg, go into the alternative media and learn about all this stuff without knowing why you even got there. Greg, go to Rome and figure out the Pope is the Antichrist and all this stuff and the Vatican beast without knowing anything. People say, well, man, you were really smart. I didn't know anything. I was lucky to be. I was just like a kid, a bull in a china shop, or someone looking for, when you're so young, you don't know anything, you get yourself in trouble and you learn a lot. That's the way I was. It's not being smart. I was probably being dumb. But that's how I learned about the Vatican. By going there, not knowing a thing, and just learning about it. And I learned about the alternative media. I got into the alternative media and all these truth groups. I remember I was researching 9/11. Oh, I'm going to get into the 9/11 truth group. And I learned that much of it is a fraud, just by being dumb and getting in and believing that it's true. So, where do you go? The question, what's a good way? There's probably many people can tell you, well, I'm going to figure out where evil is. I'm going to start here. Well, why don't you start with the story of Cain and Abel? And I don't have time. We're going to do that tomorrow again. And I've done it before, but it's always good because I always get this question, where does evil come from, Greg? This one man is evil and there's some good people Yeah, there's some good people in Washington, but they're like me when they went to Rome. They didn't know what it's all about. And there's probably underlings in Washington that don't know. And either they get on board or they don't. And maybe that's what happened to Sonny Bono, remember, when he was killed? Although they say he ran into a tree. So, anyway, we're going to look at that tomorrow because I only have about a minute and a half left. But let me, the origins of evil, and just use it as one of your theories of where evil comes from. And I will do that tomorrow for you again. Now, getting back to my original statement, the left and the right are basically working together. It's the Hegelian dialectic. What is the Hegelian dialectic? Look up the definition. But basically, what it is they will take the left wing and the right wing in government, and they constantly are completely opposed views. They will rub those together and create the synthesis they want, create the story they want. And you, not knowing it, are actually a part of it, because you're not just a spectator like you are when you go to a theater performance in Hollywood or in Broadway. You're actually a member of their team, their acting team, as an extra, right on the stage, playing a part. You're actually playing a part in this fantasy. And what I'm saying is, once you learn about it, make the decision to become a spectator like me and have some fun with it. I'm watching all of you out there who are playing the part as extras. And one of my biggest concerns, you're not even getting paid for it. At least in Hollywood, you can get $100 for a day's work. So, it's better to be a spectator and watch it all unfold and look at the thing the way it really is. The American stage play of life. And you're a big part of it. Anyway, come back tomorrow. We'll talk about the origins of evil. Look at the story of Cain and Abel. Oh my goodness, we're going to look at the Bible. And there's many people out there listen to my show go, oh, there's that story, that fictional story. Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.